All right, welcome to this 3D Solution Spotlight webinar. I'm going to try to keep it right at 30 minutes so that we don't keep you here too long on a Friday. So my topic today is what's new in XBOM. My name is Chris Cook. I'm the product manager for the HawkWare group of applications, including the XBOM partner application that we've co-developed with ATRsoft. So today, again, really the focus is going to be on what's new in this particular application. But of course, if we want to talk about what's new, we kind of have to start with, well, what is XBOM to begin with? And the simplest statement is it's a BOM management add-in for SOLIDWORKS PDM Professional, for any of you that haven't heard of it or seen it in the past. I'm going to do a little bit of live demo today too, just to show some of these new features and show you the interface, so you will actually see it. But there are a couple of reasons that we created it and some benefits that it brings to the PDM environment. Some key challenges that XBOM kind of brings to the table is being able to merge different types of bills of materials together. Right? You guys know how to create your BOMs in SolidWorks already. You've been doing that for the last 20 years that SolidWorks has had bills of materials and drawings capabilities. But a lot of times there's other information that needs to get incorporated into those bills of materials. So being able to bring them in from other areas like AutoCAD or Excel or CSV or some other sources can be important to the overall bill of materials management process. There was also, some desire to be able to edit these or manage them separately from the CAD data, so that all of the additions and modifications that are made to them to prepare them for manufacturing and distribution can be done kind of separately from the actual CAD data. BOM managers don't need to go have access to SOLIDWORKS Drawings to manage the BOMs, that kind of thing. A big topic that comes up all the time in terms of BOM management is non-modeled parts. Being able to do those in a place where we can reuse those and actually manage the non-modeled parts so that we know that they're consistent across all of our bills of materials can be really important. And so that's not necessarily easy to do in PDM or in SOLIDWORKS. So we want to give you a tool to add that to your BOM management capabilities. And just like being able to merge multiple sources, that kind of inherently means we need to be able to manage BOMs that are not SolidWorks, that come from other places, or even just a collection of SolidWorks components that need to go out in a kit or a repair kit or an upgrade or just a spare parts kits. And those we don't necessarily want to build in SolidWorks as an assembly, but we do need to create a bill of materials for them. And then, of course, most of the time we have to exchange that information with someone in some form, whether we're sending it out as a PDF or as an Excel file or exchanging it with our ERP system. We need some way to take all of this work we've done in the bill of materials and get it somewhere. All right, so those are all things that we wanted that we've incorporated into this XBOM product that again is an add-in for your PDM professional environment. So we have three main areas of improvement for this latest releases of XBOM. First area is the types of data that we can leverage in your bills of materials, some usability enhancements, and then customization, which is going to be important for some of you. On the data type side, we've always had the ability to leverage the computed BOM in PDM, Excel files, and CSV files. Those have kind of been there from the start. What we've added now is the ability to read the SOLIDWORKS CAD structure directly, to read in the BOMs that you create inside your SOLIDWORKS assemblies, and likewise the BOMs you create inside your SOLIDWORKS drawings. And we've done this for some key reasons, and they'll even become more apparent once I get into the kind of live section of this presentation. If you look at that drawing bill of materials image there in the slide, it's got 4 items listed there. One of those is an assembly. that is used as a part, right? So that's a commonly used kind of a hide feature that we enable, or option that we enable in the configuration properties of our assemblies. But there's another one called promote that is commonly used when we need to assemble things in an assembly file in SOLIDWORKS, but we don't want them to show up as an assembly in a bill of materials. They're just a collection of parts, and assembly is just a convenient way to model it, but it's not what should show up in the bill of materials. Right? So that's called promote. Those two things can be key in kind of maximizing how you use your models, but they can be problematic when it comes to BOM management. So the SOLIDWORKS bills of materials do a good job of obeying those settings, so they show up correctly on your drawings and in your assemblies, which is one of the reasons that we wanted to be able to read that information in there. We know that you're going to probably structure your BOMs in very different ways than how you actually assemble them, as far as the model goes. And so that's also why we added the CAD structure. We can go into the SOLIDWORKS assembly inside PDM. We can grab all of its references. We can look at all of those settings, and we can pull that information into our XBOM. When it comes to usability, just a few features that we added to kind of streamline the process when you're working with our XBOMs. One is the import and refresh. You'll see in that screenshot there's a couple of tabs at the top: General, Edit, and Import. When we were importing data or refreshing data, we used to have to go to the Import tab to do that. Now it's just a drop list right on the beginning screen, so you can get to it quickly. And everywhere you see not imported there in that particular example, that will show the version of the source material in the vault as it compares to what was imported. So you'll always know if your source information is up to date or not, or needs refreshed. We leave that up to you, but as we'll see with the customization section later, we can create tasks to automate the update and refresh process if that fits your workflow. One big enhancement that was requested a lot was just a way to find all the values for a certain column, for example, and replace them with something else. So we can do a find and replace right from our UI, actually by a column if you want to just limit it to column information, or it can go for the entire BOM and all the columns if you need to go find where something appears everywhere and replace it. So this can be great for things like colors or vendors or any kind of property that might change. That isn't tied specifically to something in the model like the linked materials or something. Related to the find and replace is just multi-select. Right? If I want to copy a value and paste it into a whole bunch of fields, maybe they're all blank, and I'm filling them out with actual information, being able to do that through a group of cells is important. And so we've just enabled that in our grid view to make that easier. And then one of our more recent additions in here is that in PDM, when you have an assembly checked out, you can go to its bill of materials, this computed BOM, and you can manually modify quantities. And this can be important if there's manually attached references, data sheets or anything else from your vault. Maybe there are Word documents or PDFs that you've attached as references and you want to modify the quantities directly in the BOM. Or even if the model quantities aren't correct in SOLIDWORKS, because you don't necessarily want to put all the instances. Maybe it's going to have 10,000 screws and you don't want them all in there, but you need to have some representative ones. Right? You can actually go in and change that quantity. And it appears in the BOM with that color coding. It's got the orange bar to the left of the quantity value. And so that, again, just indicates that there's an updated quantity. So when we read in the PDM BOM information, we read in those modified quantities. Obviously, if we are importing the SOLIDWORKS structure or a BOM from Excel or excuse me, from your SOLIDWORKS drawing or your SOLIDWORKS models, that's not going to be the case. It'll be whatever values you've put in those BOMs. But if you leverage this, quantity update or override feature inside PDM, and your computed BOMs will be able to read that data into XBOM as well. All right, so let's take a peek at the at what some of this means. So I've got this SOLIDWORKS assembly. This is in my vault. I've got an XBOM created for it. But if we look at its structure, it's got one assembly at the top and another one down here at the bottom. These are the same assembly, just a quantity of two. But it's really made up of the same type of components as the rest of my braces. So if I were actually to open this and look at its properties, in its configurations, I've got it set to promote. Because I've assembled it here because I want to reuse this in a bunch of places because it's convenient to model it this way. But I don't necessarily want this assembly and its part number or anything to show up because it's not something I'm going to assemble or provide on its own. So I want basically just all of these corner components to show up, which are part of the subassembly, as individual items. These, incidentally, if we look at those, have the same similar option here. If we go to their configuration properties, they're set to hide. This is an off-the-shelf assembly I buy from this supplier, so I want it to show up that way in my BOMs. So what I should end up then with a bill of materials honoring those settings is quantities for each of these support components and then 8 of these subassemblies. So if we look at this bill of materials I've been created up here in SOLIDWORKS, this is a top level only BOM, but that's exactly what we see. There are 3 different lengths of those connector supports, and then there are 8 of these end cap assemblies. Right, and so that's what we would expect then to see inside PDM. So if we look at the PDM bill of materials, what we see is that in the structure here, if we show the tree, we're seeing that subassembly. Right? I don't really want to see that subassembly. We see it here, and it says it's got a quantity of 2, right? And then there are these over here as well. Right. Likewise, these end caps. Now you notice these don't have a way to expand them. Right? So these are getting honored. It understands the hide feature, but so far it doesn't understand the promote feature. If you try to do a parts only BOM, which is essentially what our top level BOM looks like in SOLIDWORKS, all it shows are these support components, and it leaves out my hidden assembly components, and so that disappears altogether. So these are some limitations that we were trying to overcome by using XBOM. So when I created an XBOM for this assembly, this over here, I used the SOLIDWORKS CAD data source. Right, so again, I'm just reading the structure directly from PDM, but then going into those configuration settings and honoring whatever you've chosen and how you want to organize those assemblies. Right. So I would get the same results if I'd used the CAD drawing assembly BOM or set up a data source for the assemblies BOM as well, just because those obviously obey that ordering as well. But again, that's why we've set that up. So we've also added some different ways to look at the bill of materials. Now this is just a single level, but you could do indented BOMs or top level, and you can decide what the default is going to be for those. And you can have different BOM views, and each one can have a different default view as far as is it indented or is it top level only. So that's kind of new to this particular release as well. Under search is where we find the find and replace. So that pops up a dialog box here. Default is to find and replace across the whole bill of materials. So if I throw in a value and say I want to replace it with something else, of course this isn't checked out, so it's not going to let me do it. But this is where we could go and go find any instances of that, put something else in it. If you want to do it by a specific column, like maybe you're only interested in manufacturers, you can say just search by column and pick the one you've set up. And decide, how you want to match it. Is it by case? There's a whole words only. I see a lot of, typical find and replace features that you would find in a text editor, for example. So some of our other data sources, just as examples here, I've got this flight controller XBOM, and that's really an example of where we would combine different components. If I look at a 3D preview of this is a circuit board with some connectors on it. Its bill of materials in PDM is related to its SOLIDWORKS data, which really just has two components in it. But if I actually have the bill of materials for the PCB and I want to incorporate that, that's where we can leverage XBOM to do that. This particular controller actually had a BOM that existed out there on the internet, so I borrowed it with real components from real vendors with their real part numbers, and so those can be incorporated inside our XBOM. So this particular XBOM, I originally created it from the SOLIDWORKS assembly. So it's got two sources, right? I just used the PDM one to begin with. But then I also added this other one called the CC3D, and I can define as many of these data sources as I need. So if I have multiple Excel sources, for example, I get them from different places or different departments, and they're formatted differently. I can set up a source profile that knows which columns in that particular source, where are they, and how do they map into my XBOM columns, so that you can account for that. So I've got multiple Excel ones in here for, again, just different types of data that I might find. Right. So this added all of this information. If we look at our different versions, right, originally with SOLIDWORKS just had that. But then obviously in version 3, once we added the rest, right, it added all of that. If you ever need to see what's different about it, you can hit compare, and that will pop up our compare window and show you color-coded everything that was changed, added, or removed. In this case, this stuff didn't exist. So this allows you to version control and manage these components and these bills and materials kind of independent of what you're doing in SOLIDWORKS, but still linked, so that if the SOLIDWORKS assemblies change, the source materials change, maybe the Excel BOM here changes because you had to swap out some components. Right. You can always come right back to here with it checked out and refresh. You'll see if the versions are out of date, and you can make sure that that the combined BOM is always up to date. So another area that we added in this particular release was some customization. And by that, I mean we kind of opened up the an API for it, right, which is just an application programming interface. It just means that we made some of the code that we use to run XBOM kind of externally available if you want to write your own sort of macros and tools that tell XBOM to do something. Right. So great examples of that would be like custom tasks in PDM that might refresh and update the BOM. or some external viewer. Maybe you wanted to go and be able to grab XBOM information and view it somewhere. Right? Those are all things that you would leverage an API to do. Something that's working outside XBOM that needs to access the XBOM application and any of its data. Another area that of customization that's in there as well is scripting. It's very similar to the API, but it's just the application's different. It's usually things that you're going to automate within the application inside, like in this case, inside the say the XBOM editor interface that are triggered by events. So if I want to click on a cell, for example, and have it launch some script to go to ERP and pull data, or present a list with some options, those kinds of things that you would use the scripting engine to do versus the API. Right. So examples that we've already done with using the XBOM API, we wrote a kind of an ECO BOM management for one customer that allows them to do some redlining and kind of ECO management based on their current processes. And an SAP connector for XBOM. So this one was interesting in that, we've got BOM compare inside PDM, you've got BOM compare inside XBOM. What we don't have is API access to BOM compare in PDM, right? So we'd actually have to recreate the compare feature from scratch in order to be able to do that directly from the PDM data. Whereas the BOM compare output that we saw in XBOM is directly available inside XBOM's API. So it's much easier to present BOM change information through the XBOM interface than it is from PDM. And so as the foundation for a connector to SAP, which only wants to change information, it made sense to leverage XBOM for that. And of course, if you want to add on to that, managing non-modeled parts and the other things that you're going to do with the BOM, then it makes sense to build that on top of the XBOM foundation. For scripting, so far the only the commissioned outputs we've done are Excel reports, where they want to format the output to a specific Excel template that they already use to distribute bill of materials information around, and pull in information from like the data card for the source files and things like that. Those we're already doing in Excel. But like I said, you can, since it's event driven, you've got a lot of kind of wide open opportunities there for how you enter or manage the information inside the XBOM using those scripts as well. If you want some more information or want to just see some more recorded videos, or even contact us for a demo to talk about how XBOM might fit in your application, you can feel free to call us. We've got toll-free numbers for the US and Canada. We've got an updated product page for XBOM now on hawkridgesys.com. You'll see it under our products category. And of course, you can always email us